Good evening, everyone. I'll put the mask back on and you guys can move up. You don't have to smell my breath. Everybody's way back tonight. My goodness. Now I'm stressed, I got to raise my voice. Nice to see everyone. And that opening reading was perfect for this. That's the message. If you had to summarize it in a page and a half, that's tonight's lecture about stress. That, believe it or not, it's not bad, right? Stress is its purpose in a lot of ways is to help us elevate emotionally, right, and evolve. And we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. Um, I can't take any credit for the content as usual. Existential Conflicts, Chapter 16, is a book that was written, channeled by Devaldo Franco from the Spirit Joanna DeAngelis. And I also borrowed some slides from our friend Valdo from a talk he did on the same topic in 2019. I just put it all together and get to share it with you tonight. So thank you for the opportunity. So when you read the word stress, right, what is that? 6 letters? Do you automatically get tense and feel stressed? Does it trigger a negative response or negative connotation? For me, it does. Yeah, it does, right? I think it does. So hopefully tonight we can talk a little bit about that and make us actually not feel that. So this is the book, the main content. That's the cover. Joanna DeAngelis is amazing. She reminds me of authors or professors I had in grad school. It's very detailed content, always followed though by so a description of the problem, followed by root causes and the mechanisms of the issues, but always finishing and wrapping up with love and a step by step guide or ideas for therapy, if you will. So hope you enjoy. This is the cover slide from Baldo's talk in 2019. I have terrible graphics, so I love when I find good slides that I can borrow because I'm not very creative. So let's jump in to stress, specifically chapter 16 from uh, Existential Conflicts. Um, so in this chapter, she talks about root causes of stress. I'll give you a couple seconds just to think about some of your root causes, and then we'll share some examples. Then she talks about the processes and the mechanisms or the means of stress. What not the cause, but what fuels it, what makes it worse, how it perseverates. And then, as I said, she always ends a chapter or book with therapy. In this case, what she calls stress therapy. Okay, easy enough. We only have 3 hours, so I'm going to try to cover it all as best I can. Kidding. All right. So she starts off by defining this situation like relative freedom. Everything's relative, right? We have this one life that we're living now. It's on a continuum of multiple lives. We are dealing with issues in this life, issues from the past, things we have overcome, not overcome. So that's why she says relative, right? The relative freedom that God gave us is destined for awakening our potential through our own effort. So this stress, these obstacles that we face, right? These things that cause us stress. I just drove, from the villages here. A lot of stress when closer I got to Orlando, right? Those are opportunities, not to throw my hands in the air, get mad, or tell my neighbor that he's number one, right? It's an opportunity to grow patience. It's an opportunity to elevate myself emotionally, wish him luck, pray for him, right? Um, so that's our own efforts, right? Our awakening our potential through our own efforts, accepting that our path will consist of errors and achievements. We're going to make mistakes. Other people are going to hurt us. We're going to hurt other people. We're also going to accomplish achievements, right? We're going to overcome anger in some cases. We're going to overcome resentment. We're going to love our enemy. We're going to turn the other cheek. We're going to, achieve things. But it's going to be a mix, right? It's not always going to be roses and champagne, right? Or accomplishments, right? There's going to be thorns and needles in the grass. Um, she goes on to say that it's not possible to reach the top of the mountain of faith without the hike through the narrow path. So there's a test I do in the office. It's a cognition screening, and the wheel that the patient uses, it wobbles and it shakes, right? And it calibrates the first two tests for whoever's taking it. And every time I say that, it makes me think of this, right? I tell the patient, listen, the harder it is, the better you're doing. right? And that reminds me of this, right? It's the harder things seem, right? The better we're doing, right? The better the opportunity, right, to overcome. Now, we don't, not necessarily better, because we could make mistakes or the same mistakes we've made. But the harder it is, the more we're being challenged, the more or the bigger the opportunity to grow. Does that make sense? Cool. Be thankful for the difficulties. All right. And what do we call this? What do we equate this to in Spiritism? Cause and effect, right? That's one of our tenets, one of our basic or foundational um, expressions or truths. I am, you are, right? Living the consequences, right? The effect of things we've done previously. 10 minutes ago, 10 hours ago, 10 days ago, 10 lifetimes ago, right? Every aspect of where I am right now are the consequences of choices I've made or didn't make previously. Not just me, you also. Make sense? Cool. And it's along this continuum, right, that we evolve. Everybody here, right, all life, created initially by God, simple and lacking knowledge, the bottom left of this graph. And I still don't remember whose slide this is. I think I borrowed it from you. I don't know if you made it. Fair enough. Well, thank you to them, right? Bottom left, right? Simple and lacking knowledge, lifetime after lifetime, making choices, not making choices. We evolve at our own pace, right? By our own free will, by our actions, to the ultimate, right? Destination of being a pure spirit, that Christ like perfection. Um, are we going to get there this lifetime? Probably not, right? Because if we're on earth, chances are, right, we're still in that lower third, right? We're imperfect. We're more tied to matter. We're more tied to ego, to pride, to the to the senses, right? Pleasure of the senses, as opposed to love, right, and peace, and that Christ-like behavior that He showed, right? Make sense? But ultimately, um, stress that we encounter along the way helps us to evolve if we choose correctly and overcome appropriately. All right. I almost changed the wording in this because it didn't make sense, but let me read it like she wrote it. Right, when we connect ourselves with the life around us, it almost seems like, well, when we live is what I wanted to say, but then I thought about it. How often can we go through life not connecting? Right, just go through the motions. I've made the drive up the turnpike many a day. I couldn't even tell you how I did it, right? It just it's like on autopilot almost, right? Um, so what the point here is, it's not just about living and getting up and forcing coffee down your throat and getting through the day. It's about connecting. If you truly connect with the life around you, what she tells us is we're going to see that our reality is either drawn by us or offered to us by divine love, right? We don't have to connect, right? We can choose to be unaware. We can choose to just walk through the day with our eyes closed, not see the opportunities, not experience the opportunities, right? But if we truly connect, there's two origins of our reality, drawn by us, by our cause and effect, by our choices, right? Or the things that we're doing, drawing the energy to us, right? Are we living an elevated life? Are we studying? Are we being kind to ourselves, to others, and drawing positive energy? I don't know about you guys, but when I walk in here, I feel a lot more positive energy than when I'm out there. You just walk into. Sometimes I feel guilty because I'm bringing negative energy in with me. Anybody else feel that way? Like, man, don't come with me. Stay out here, right? Because I had a stressful day or something, right? But when I come in here, I feel that positive energy. When I leave here, I'm lighter than when I walked in, right? Because I connected, because I took the time to listen, to pray, to meditate. So I'm drawing that to me, right? In a lot of ways. I can also draw negativity to me, right? If I made a left instead of a right and went to the bar and got loaded, right? Like I probably did many years ago, I'm drawing a lot of negativity to me, right? So we draw it to us. Sometimes it's offered to us, and if we're connected and we're paying attention, we can not only delineate which origin, but we're better prepared to take advantage and act on it. Okay. All right. I won't belabor that. So, what are causes of stress according to Joanna? Um, and here's her definition, right? Any type of event or occurrence in life that causes force or pressure on us could be considered as being stressful. Doesn't necessarily have to be, but it could be considered stressful. It's not always associated with an isolated event, right? Typically, it's associated with the sum of non specified occurrences that can manifest as damage or defense. So think about that, right? In the course of a day, they say every accident that happens is not one event; it's a chain of events that lead up to the accident. Just like a fight or a disagreement or something that finally, what's the saying? The last straw, right? The straw that broke the camel's back, right? Um, what she's telling us here is it's not necessarily an accident event, but as we go through our day, as we go through our life, little things just keep adding up, adding up, adding up. And if we don't develop a therapy for it or a way to counteract it, eventually these little things will add up and will snap. Okay, and it'll cause damage or defense. She says. She goes on and elaborates. She says stress is widespread. Right? The sarcastic one in me says, "Duh," but I don't want to be disrespectful, right? Definitely widespread. That's not any revelation to any of us, right? Um, she says, in competitive and afflicted societies, is there any such thing as a non-competitive or a non-afflicted society nowadays? We're all connected to the internet, right? For the most part. Um, I think every time I go on Facebook, it's fun for a couple seconds and then it's stressful. There's always something there that can push your button. So, um, regardless of where we live, there's just so much competition or so much affliction that we can easily tap into if we choose to. Um, another reason stress is widespread, she says, is because we're overcommitted. How many of you have too many things on your to-do list and not enough time? Right? Many of us, right? Lack of time. Well, we all have 24 hours in a day, right? So we have to choose and we have to prioritize. But wouldn't it be nice if we could um, create more time or take a pill that made us feel like we had 8 hours of sleep and we didn't have to sleep, so we get another 8 hours, right? Wouldn't that be something? Um, but we all find ourselves lacking time at some point. The search for work or better wages, right? That's a universal issue, especially in times of disaster or a pandemic, if you will. Lots of people today looking for work or trying to make better wages. Trying to improve their living condition, that can be stressful. Everybody, it seems, is trying to improve their situation. And then social isolation. And don't we know that now more than ever in the last year and a half? I have three teenage daughters, um, young teenagers, so 13 and preteens, 12-year-olds. Um, and I'm just shocked at the impact of this social isolation on them. When all this started happening, the last thing I thought about was it was going to do what it did to the kids. Um, Silly me, right? I should have seen that coming. But a lot of stress, not just to the kids, but everybody. This inability to hug. Olivia, I haven't hugged you in a year and a half. That bothers me. I love you, right? All you guys, right? I come in here and I'm doing this, right? It takes a toll on us, right? You can't hug, you can't kiss, you can't even shaking hands, right? Which is something I do all the time. It creates a social isolation, thus increasing stress for all of us. Um, so the kids, this manifested with increased attitude, right? Um, too much time on their devices, right? Led to irritability, led to not sleeping well, sleep cycles getting messed up, um, not seeing their friends, right? So a lot of their interaction, a lot of their communication is they're playing games, um, whatever they play on these computers, and they're talking to friends via the mic and the speaker, but they're not nothing in person, you know. Um, Sports, they didn't play sports for the longest time. No soccer, no, so all these things impacted them. But the biggest issue that personally that we saw uh, was just severe depression with one of our daughters. That I'm happy to say we're on the upside thanks to uh, this wonderful place and the therapies they offer and medicine, the medical community. Um, very shocking. I work with older people primarily, so I expect that with that. But I thought kids were more resilient, if you know what I mean. So, anyways, that's It definitely impacted us that way, but we're improving. We're on the right side of this, I think. Any questions or thoughts on these? Now, this is from a Spiritist book, right? This is Joanna De Angelis, written. I don't even. I'm sorry, I don't know the date that this book was published, when it left Devaldo's hand, right, as he was channeling. But it was sometime this century, right? It's not this century, the late 1900s, I would think. Um, what's that? Yeah, the 20th. Sorry, yes, the 1900s is what I meant. This 19 something, right? Probably 80 or 90. Who knows? Devaldo's been writing or channeling for a long time, but it's not one of his newer ones. But the point I'm trying to make is the next slide that I borrowed from Valdo's research from his PowerPoint is this is from NPR. I think is the source. Not too long ago, last year or the year before, right? Yeah, National Public Radio, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Here's what they listed as the most common contributors to stress among Americans with a great deal of stress. The two lists look pretty familiar, right? What's number one? Too many responsibilities, right? Too many things on your to do list. Too many responsibilities. Problems with finances. Very real, right? Um, um, Money can definitely cause, the lack of money can definitely cause stress. Too much money can cause stress. Um, It's crazy, right? There's a lot of situations. Problems with work problems, right? Among employed, health problems are huge. How many have never experienced this? Problems with the immediate family. Yeah, it happens, right? I ever tell you the 2 worst weeks of my marriage? I won't bore you, but I'll never forget. Right? It was actually a couple days before we're gonna get married. We're in the record store trying to decide what song we're gonna play, and I couldn't even. I don't even remember what caused it. But weddings is my point. A lot of stress, right? Prepare the happiest day of your life, right? 17 years, right? But all the things leading up to cause stress. And then one time I made us move to Arizona in a U-Haul. That was a tough week. If you see her, don't mention it, please. We try not to talk about it. No, great. And then what's the other one? Most of you in this room don't have this problem, being unhappy with the way you look. You're all very beautiful, right? But it's a problem, right? These all cause stress. So Joanna tells us this gives rise to what? Anxiety. What's anxiety? It's a concern about the future, right? You're so worried about what's going to happen next, you get stuck in the present, right? You can't do anything, or you do things more slowly, or you do things fearfully, right? Worrying about tomorrow can cause stress. So I have this saying, it's not my saying. I got it from, I don't even know. Be here now. Right? Just worry about right now. This moment is the only thing I can really control. Um, and if I do my best in this moment, the future is going to work itself out. I have faith, right? I say that. I mean, most of the time, right? Not all the time. I get anxious at times. How about guilt? What's guilt? Guilt's living too much in the past, right? So briefly, think about something negative. All right, stop thinking about it. This is supposed to lift you up, right? But my point is, think about something bad that happened in the past. How many times did it happen? Once. But every time we think about it, every time we feel guilt about it, what happens? We relive it. The MRI studies show that emotion in real time looks the same on an MRI as when you're remembering it. It's just same parts of the brain fire up, right? What does that mean? Every time we feel guilt, we're reliving the event. We're causing the pain all over again, like it just happened. So stop doing that. I'll try if you try. Okay? It's hard though, right? What else does she talk about? Gives rise to an emotional imbalance. If left unchecked, that becomes all kinds of psychiatric disorders, right? Balance is important. Fatigue, that's a given, right? That's an easy one, I think. The more stressed we are, we get tired, right? Feel tired all the time. Disturbing problems, disorganized behavior, and psychological disturbances. All these are the result of stress, um, according to Joanna. I don't think there's anything on there that I wouldn't agree with. Any of you see anything? Make sense? All right. So, what is all these possible things that could result from stress? What she's telling us leads to what we call fight, or she calls fight or flight, which has to do with the limbic system. When we were living in caves, right, centuries ago, right? Think about any animal, right? Um, you're being hunted. Uh, the limbic system kicks in, and you either run or you fight. And what Joanna tells us in this chapter is stress left unchecked, right, leads to a perpetual situation where you're either fighting in the sense of you're so worried or anxious about the future and threats that you're always on guard, right? People can't even approach you. You can't experience anything without being defensive, right? You're ready to fight, right? How many times do you run into people like that? It happens, right? Or the other side of that is um, flight, right? What's the biggest? I think the biggest version of flight for me is a detachment, right? You don't really realize you're avoiding problems or getting away from it, but you kind of disconnect, you shut yourself off, and you don't connect, right? So that's just similar to flying away, right? Or run. You could run too, I guess, in these situations. But typically, this presents, I think, and I think she mentions it here, um, denial of identifying danger, right? You just don't want to deal with it, so you fly, you run away from it, or you ignore that it's even happening. But continued exposure to stress without dealing with it, without therapy, without dealing, overcoming it, or finding a way to channel it is going to lead to this perpetual condition of either fight or flight. And what does that do? Just makes it worse, right? Just perpetuates, right? It's terrible. All right, so she gives more examples, right? Achieving success can cause stress, right? So getting married, I told you my experience, right? It was stressful, right? Course completion, right? You spend weeks, months, years pursuing a degree of some kind or some type of course study, and finally you finish. What happens? Now you're worrying about what am I? Okay, I got to get a job. What am I going to do next? What's the next degree, right? Crazy. I I uh, I remember finishing my doctorate and joking. I have terrible handwriting, and my mother, when I got off stage, the first thing she said is, "Now you don't have to worry about, you don't have to apologize for your handwriting anymore." And I laughed, and then I said, I remember this vividly. I said, "And I never have to worry about another class, another work, right? Because I'm done, right? The doctorate's as high as you can go." Was I wrong or what? Right? Because then you learn about spiritism, or you get a job, or you want to improve, right? It's like no matter how far you think you go, you can always create more stress because you can go farther. Right? Make sense? So I really thought when I did that I was done, but that was 20 years, no, almost 20 years ago. Anyways, different story. Graduation, right? Same situation. You're done with your coursework, but now you got to get a job. Career milestones, she cites. Business success. How many of you been in business? One day it's great, next day you're broke. Sometimes, right? It's a roller coaster, man. Um, but it's fun. I like roller coasters, right? But business success can cause stress. Just people think success, right? And no stress. Well, you can't have one without the others, hey. But Joanne is here to tell us that we can manage it. And then achieving desired outcomes also generates stress, right? Because you're not done. You find the next hurdle to jump. She gives more expression or more examples, rather, right? Um, so I told you I have a 13-year-old and two 12-year-olds. How much time do I have before they go off to college? 6, 7 years, right? Can you believe my wife and I are already talking about what are we going to do when they go to college? That's crazy. Be here now, right? Enjoy the time we have, and let's not worry about what happens when they fly the net, when they fly the coop, right? Going off to college, right? She gives that as an example of being very stressful. Getting married, we repeated. How about losing your job, getting terminated? Super stress, right? Loss of a loved one, we've all incurred that, right? Huge pain, right? That we carry with us. But here's the key, right? Here's the last sentence of the slide that probably the most important. Our ego establishes for each of us individually what that stress does to our soul, does to our life, does to those around us. Why? because we can control it, right? Things happen to us, but they only impact us to the extent that our ego lets them in that sense. In other words, kids grow up. Am I worried about that? Should I be worried about that? I could be. That's life. I'm so excited. I hope. I could be wrong, but I'm not going to lose sleep today worrying about them leaving the house. The whole idea is grow up, nurture them, opportunity for them, right? What's on one here that like getting terminated, right? I if I told you right now if I lost my job tomorrow, I wouldn't be stressed. I'd be lying to you. But if I pause for a minute, I think it'd be one of the coolest things. You're not recording this, right?
No.
Okay, good. I don't want the company to see.
No, nobody's going to.
But if I got fired tomorrow or I quit tomorrow, part of that's exciting to me. Why?
Don't go there.
Don't go there.
No.
Okay, yeah,
It is
you're. That's right.
recorded.
You're my friend, my wife's friend. That's
No, no, it is
right.
recorded.
I'm kidding. Um, my point is, it's kind of exciting because what does that mean? It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to do something different. If my wife left me tomorrow, God forbid, right? It would hurt, right? I can take that in and be stressed, be anxious, be sad, be demoralized, or I can let the pain, it can hurt, but I can see the opportunity, well, to move on. Now, I'm not hoping for that. Don't take this the wrong way. But my point is, everything that happens to us, impact it happened. It's real. But what the lasting impact on it has that it has on us is really up to how we receive it and how we let it impact us. Is that am I simplifying it too much, or is that
No,
make sense?
that's
All right,
very good.
cool. So here she comes with some lessons, right? They should not, all these things, right, that we've been talking about, they should not cause stress, she tells us. Their objective is to mature our emotional capacity. Everything that hurts us, everything that causes us stress, everything that causes us pain is real. We're not telling you to ignore it, but it's an opportunity to grow as a result. I'm so thankful for things that happened 20, 25 years ago in my life that were extremely painful, right? Because without those things, I wouldn't be standing here today. I grew as a result, as all of you did. This is not just me. I mean, you can all look back on difficult times in your life, things that happened that at the time you were just praying they wouldn't happen. But look at you now and how you've grown. Um, she also says that these situations of stress should strengthen our emotional capacity as well, and that each existential experience turns into emotional value. Do we lose emotional value? Do we lose moral development when we die? Does it go in the dirt with our bodies? No, right? We're gonna die at some point, right? The shirts on my back, the certificates on my wall, the money in my bank, the car I drive, the socks on my feet, they stay. What do you take with you? What stays with my soul? Right? Character, education, right? Intelligence, moral development, right? You die, you heal, you are reborn, right? In a new life at some point. Do you automatically become better in the next life? Absolutely not. Do you go backwards and lose those achievements? This emotional value that she's describing? No. That stays with you. That's yours. You've earned it. Wherever we are today, we've achieved that attainment. We've attained that moral capacity, that emotional capacity, that character um, that never leaves us. All that other stuff doesn't come. So that's the important part. No matter how bad it gets in this life, we're presented with opportunities to learn and to grow. Right? Peter did a talk here many years ago, and I've been thinking about this a little bit today. The last 3 months for me has been challenging, right? Stressful. I've gained weight. I'm worried about things at home, so the stress at work. Um, and Peter taught us something many years ago that I did for years. Um, First, when you wake up and get out of bed, say thank you and just rattle off things you're grateful for. And it dawned on me, this was this morning, it dawned on me, I stopped doing that at some point the last couple of months. And I'm miserable, right? I got out of the habit of being grateful for life, thanking God for a new day, and writing down or speaking what I'm grateful for. So I'm gonna start that again tomorrow. So hopefully in 3 more months I'll have a different. I'll tell you that it worked and I got myself back together. But the point here is um, that all of these stresses can be turned into positive situations that are actually encouraging personal growth if we look at them that way. Um, and she reiterates this by telling us, right, that no one reaches the platform of equilibrium without passing tests of edifying struggles. Equilibrium is huge, right? We all want balance in our lives, right? Even though it seems like we go from extreme to extreme sometimes. But the point is, we'll never have balance. We'll never find equilibrium, right? Without passing through these struggles and these tests. It's good. The harder it is, the better you're doing in some ways, right? Make sense? Okay. Sometimes it just feels like it's too hard, though, right? But don't give up. All right, so those are causes, root causes. Now she talks about the process and the mechanics of stress. And she tells us that denying struggles that are essential for growth, right? Things like resenting others for no legitimate reason. How many of us have been envious of others, or man, I wish I had what he had, or man, I can't believe that guy gets all the luck, or man, that guy has the worst luck, right? The different things, right? We all talk. We have examples of this. I shouldn't say we all talk about it, but I'm sure we have examples. And she says that by allowing these to accumulate and create unhappiness or ungratefulness, like blaming of others for their luck or their karma, getting stuck in idleness, staying. You ever meet people that you ask them how they're doing and there's always something wrong, right? There's extreme cases of that, right, and not so severe, but you just if you stay stuck in these situations and don't deal with the stress, um, you perpetuate it, right? You create this loop, like a feedback loop, with that noise from a mic. It doesn't go away until you pull the microphone away from the speaker, right? Same thing with the ramifications of stress and not dealing with it. The more you stay in that vicious cycle of these examples, it just keeps going like you're on a hamster on a wheel, just round and round and round. And what it leads to, she tells us, is a lack of productivity. Right? I remember going back to school, was doing the post bac requirements for my master's degree first, so I could get into a master's program. And I'd gone through a divorce. I was drinking. I was eating too much. All I did for that 28 credits, right? I forget how many classes it is I got myself off the couch and I went to class and got home, ordered pizza, right? I mean, I studied. I only the bare necessities, right? I got to class, I studied. Everything else was just no productivity, right? I think I was 260 pounds, right? I had bags under my eyes. I could tell you all kinds of stuff about Gumby's pizza and the different flavors they had. Um, and luckily, by the grace of God, I finished those post backs and turned my life around. But anyways, the point is, if left unchecked, right, lack of productivity, lack of personal effort, right, pessimism, right, gloom and doom, right, every like shoe's gonna drop, no matter what comes my way, I'm gonna see negativity. You become dependent on others, right? Um, and she tells us that we each experience this in our own way and at our own time. Um, right? It sounds just like the way we evolve, right? From life after life, at our own pace, at our own time. You're going to do what you're going to do until you're ready to do something different. And in order to achieve different results, you've got to be willing to do things you haven't done before, right? Is a classic quote. I couldn't tell you who said it. Um, so the point is, no matter where we find ourselves on the stress continuum or the difficulty continuum, we can stay in that pattern forever or for a long time if we choose, or we can snap out of it. And what she tells us, right, Joanna tells us, when does this happen? Right? How does it happen? Think about it for a second. Who's it up to? Us, right? When one wants to change, right? You got to want it, and you got to be able to go through the motions and the steps to do it. But nothing's going to change until somebody wants to change, right? Because behavior um, is required. The desire to acquire well-being is requiring. You've got to educate your mind, right? In some ways, you're doing that tonight, right, about this topic. Um, and you've got to educate your feelings, right? That's key. Mind and feelings are key. Anxiety, she says, is inevitable in several situations. When controlled, it can be avoided so it does not reach unhealthy psychological levels. And that was the struggle, to answer your question, Livia, right? Um, it got to the point where we realized, hey, wait a minute, we can't manage this. We're not doing this right. So we got help, right? We got a therapist, we got a psychiatrist. Um, why did we do that? Because we want to change, right? When you want change and you put in the steps, you can change things. And that's what she's telling us here. You've got to want it, you've got to feel it, you've got to do the things to change your behavior. And that's what she calls therapy for stress. We're almost done. Um, Therapy for stress, the crucial piece, the key to this, right? The foundation of this, she says, is the belief in the future life. All right, and I'll tell you, the people I've experienced that I know that have experienced this, when they're really down and they're really low, they're not talking about the future. They're talking about the past. They're talking about what's wrong. The cool thing though is you start the therapy process. You start whatever you're doing, or you decide you want to change. All of a sudden, it's the greatest joy is when you hear somebody that's down that you weren't sure if they were going to get through the night, right? Um, they start talking about next week, or they start talking about um, next month or some future event. Because if we're thinking about the future life, we have a goal, we have an objective, we have dreams, right? So what she's telling us is believe in the future, right? Believe, be optimistic, right? In the immortality of the spirit, right? I could die tonight on the way home. It's not the end, right? I'm going to reincarnate. I'm going to continue to evolve, right? So this is just one little sliver of my immortality. Believing in that is crucial, she says. And more importantly, or just as important, right? It's glorious destination, right? We're all destined for that top right end of that graph, right? Pure spirit, Christ-like perfection. In our own time, at our own pace, we decide, right? And this constitutes the best preventative self therapy in relation to stress and in overcoming it. And then, um, does that sound doable? Does it sound too easy? Did we simplify it? Maybe. So, what I'd leave you with for this is, in addition to the stuff we talked about tonight, good readings, coming here, getting passes, fraternal counseling on Wednesday nights, right? We'll have classes again on Tuesdays, I would imagine, in the fall, so we can educate ourselves. What's really important is that stress can be overcome. Sometimes you can't do it by yourself. It's okay to get help, right? And ultimately, it's important to to have a role model, right? To have to have an example. And would you agree that we've got the best example in Christ, right? The gospel that He left us, right? Um, the the way He lived. How many of us could deal with the stresses that He faced in those final weeks of His life and not blown our stack, or not want to run, or not want to seek revenge, right? So when we're down, when we're out, when we're feeling like we're overwhelmed, His example, His message can really be a guide to us. And she leaves us with a couple, just two more slides, okay? Faith is the mother of all virtues, she says. It must be active in order to be productive. It must not grow numb. How do we stimulate growth in faith? By activity, by action, charity, work, right? The law of work, the law of progress. Um, be active even when you're down, even when you're stressed. Try to do good things. Try to help people. Try to be productive, is what she's telling us. And then finally, um, she talks about overcoming stress, right? And most importantly, she says, we must be aware, right? She reiterates that you have to eat healthy and exercise, right, for physical health. You have to desire change. I love this one. Ask for help, right? We talked about that. She recommends that, or tells us that prayer and meditation will lead to the spiritual health. And then, most important, right? The last one, right? Helping others via work and charity. It doesn't have to be dollars, it doesn't have to be big things, right? Just a sincere desire to help people in some way, right? That's it. Work and charity. All right, I'm sorry, guys. I went a little bit long. I thank you for your time and attention and the opportunity to share this with you. Thank you so much.